"We have more important things to do, Mom." Those were the words my son, Ethan, texted me on the day of my 65th birthday. I was sitting at my dining room table, surrounded by gold balloons and a chocolate cake I had baked with my own 2 hands. Just like every year for the past 15 years, ever since his father died. 51 missed calls. That's what I found on my phone the next morning. 51 times they tried to reach me after I sold the house I had bought for them without telling them a thing. But that morning, as I counted each missed call with the same coldness I'd felt signing the sale papers, I remembered exactly how all of this had started. It was a Tuesday in October when I decided to plan my birthday dinner. I'd been getting ready for weeks, buying the ingredients for Ethan's favorite cake, the same kind he'd loved since he was a little boy. I had even sent out my mother's old dining room table to be refinished. The house smelled of cinnamon and vanilla when the baking was done. I'd laid out embroidered tablecloths, linen napkins I saved for special occasions, and even cut flowers from the garden for a centerpiece. Everything was perfect, just as I always tried to make it when my family came to visit. By 6 o'clock in the evening, the table was set for 4. Ethan, his wife Jessica, my granddaughter Maya, and me. I had spent the entire afternoon cooking: herb roasted chicken, creamy mashed potatoes, a fresh salad, and those dinner rolls that Jessica loved so much. The golden afternoon light streamed through the dining room windows, creating that warm atmosphere that always made me feel like all was right with the world. I lit the candles, put on some soft music, and sat down to wait. 6:30. 7:30. The chicken was getting cold. The candles had burned halfway down, and I was still sitting in my chair, wearing the blue dress I'd bought especially for the occasion, looking toward the door every time I heard a car on the street. At 8, I decided to call. The phone rang 5 times before Ethan answered, his voice distracted, as if he were multitasking while talking to me. "Mom, I'm so sorry, but we're not going to be able to make it. Something came up with Jessica's work, and Maya has a big school project due tomorrow." His voice was flat, emotionless, as if he were canceling a dentist appointment. "Not my birthday celebration. We'll celebrate some other day, yeah?" Before I could even respond, he had hung up. I sat in silence for a long time, the phone still in my hand, staring at the perfectly set table that suddenly looked like an empty theater stage after all the actors have gone home. The candles were still burning, the food was still warm, but the house was filled with a silence that hurt more than any shout. That's when the text message arrived. "We have more important things to do, Mom." Not even a proper apology, not a belated happy birthday, just that one cold sentence that stabbed me in the chest like a knife. That night, as I packed the food into plastic containers and blew out the melted candles, I didn't cry. Something strange was happening inside me, something that took me days to identify. It wasn't sadness. It was a kind of cold awakening, like when you realize you've been living in a dream and suddenly open your eyes to a completely different reality. They should have noticed the signs long before. Now, sitting on my new deck a few hundred miles away, I can see with crystal clarity all the moments I ignored, all the strange conversations I let slide, all the glances Ethan and Jessica exchanged when they thought I wasn't watching. The truth is, I had been blind for months, maybe years, believing I was the perfect grandmother and mother-in-law, the one who was always available, the one who never said no. It had all started 6 months before my birthday, in April, when Ethan showed up at my house with a folder full of papers and that smile he used to wear as a child when he wanted to ask for something. "Mom, I have a proposal you're going to love," he said, settling onto the living room sofa while Jessica stood by the window, looking out at the garden with an expression I now understand was poorly disguised impatience. "We found the perfect house for us, but we need your help with the down payment." Ethan continued, extending his hands toward me in that gesture I knew so well. "It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, Mom. A house in the best neighborhood with a yard for Maya, near the good schools." His eyes shone with a genuine excitement I hadn't seen in years, and my mother's heart melted instantly. The house cost $450,000. They had saved $70,000, but they needed me to put in the remaining $150,000 for a proper down payment. "It's only temporary," Jessica insisted, finally approaching the sofa with a smile I now recognize as calculated. "In 6 months, we'll pay you back everything, with interest." Ethan just got that promotion at the firm, and I have several big design projects that are about to be confirmed. I didn't hesitate for a second. That very afternoon, we went to the bank. I took the money from my life savings. The dollars I had scraped together working as a secretary for 40 years, cleaning offices on the weekends, selling homemade pies at the church bake sales. I handed over all that silent sacrifice without a second thought, because I saw the happiness in my son's eyes, because I wanted my granddaughter to grow up in a beautiful home, because I believed that's what mothers did, gave everything for their children's happiness. But there was something else. Ethan asked me to sign some papers to facilitate the legal process. "You know how these things are, Mom," he explained as I signed document after document without reading them completely. "It's just to get everything properly registered, avoid any trouble with the IRS." His voice sounded so confident, so professional, that I trusted him completely. After all, he worked for a real estate company. He knew about these things far more than I did. The first few months after the purchase were lovely. Ethan would call me every week to tell me about the improvements they were making. He sent me pictures of the garden they were planting, of the room they had decorated for Maya. Jessica even invited me to lunch a couple of times, showing me furniture catalogs and asking for my opinion on paint colors. I felt included, important, useful. But after my birthday, something changed radically. The calls became scarce, distant. When I called, they were always busy, always in a hurry, always had something more urgent to attend to. "We'll call you back, Mom," became the most common phrase in our conversations, a promise they rarely kept. It was Maya who, unknowingly, gave me the first real clue about what was happening. My 16-year-old granddaughter showed up at my house one Saturday afternoon, her eyes red from crying and a look of confusion on her face that broke my heart. "Grandma," she said, sitting at the kitchen table where we had done homework together so many times, "why are Mom and Dad talking about selling your house?" "My house, not our house, not the house we bought together." "Your house," Maya had said. The world stopped for a moment, like when you're watching a movie and someone suddenly pauses the frame at the exact moment that changes the entire story. "What did you say, sweetheart?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm while inside I felt something shattering. "Yesterday, I heard Dad on the phone with someone," Maya continued, nervously fiddling with her hands. "He said they already had a buyer for Grandma Eleanor's house, that they were going to close the deal next week." She paused, looking at me with those big, worried eyes she had inherited from her grandfather. "But Grandma, isn't it your house? Why would they sell it without asking you?" In that moment, sitting in my kitchen with my granddaughter, I understood that I had been the biggest fool in the world. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stayed awake until 4 in the morning, sitting on my bed with all the papers I had signed 6 months earlier spread across the comforter, trying to understand the words that now took on a completely different meaning. A small table lamp cast strange shadows on the documents, and the more I read, the more my blood ran cold. It wasn't just a home purchase. According to the papers in front of me, I had transferred the full ownership to Ethan and Jessica. My signature was there on every page, authorizing the total transfer of the $150,000, not as a loan, but as a gift. I had signed papers that made them the sole legal owners of the property. I wasn't a co-owner. I had no rights to that house. Officially, I didn't exist in that transaction, except as the person who had handed over the money. I got out of bed like a sleepwalker and went to my computer. My hands trembled as I typed the house's address into a search engine. What I found took my breath away. There it was. House for sale, excellent opportunity. Price, $595,000. The photos showed the house I had paid for, but with upgrades and decorations that had clearly cost a fortune. The garden looked spectacular with new plants and an automatic sprinkler system. The kitchen had been completely remodeled with stainless steel appliances. The floors had been replaced with Italian marble, but what hurt the most was reading the description. Beautiful family home, sold due to owners relocating out of state. Not a single mention that this house had been paid for with the life savings of a 65-year-old woman. Not a word about the sacrifice, about the nights I worked late sewing to save that money, about the weekends I cleaned offices to give them that opportunity. I kept digging like a private detective in a mystery film. I found Jessica's Facebook page, which she had been updating constantly with photos of the house, presenting it as our perfect home and the result of so much hard work and saving. In one particularly elaborate post, she had written, "Thanks to God and our hard work, we finally have the house of our dreams. Anything is possible with dedication." The comments were full of congratulations from friends and family who obviously didn't know the truth. But there was more, so much more. On Instagram, Ethan had been posting photos of a new car, a silver sedan that cost at least $50,000. In his active stories, I could see pictures from expensive restaurants, a weekend getaway to the beach, designer clothes, all paid for with the money they were supposed to pay me back in 6 months. At 5 in the morning, as the sun began to peek through my window, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to confront them, but not as the hurt and confused mother I had been until that moment. I would arrive prepared, with evidence, with specific questions, with the coldness of someone who had finally opened her eyes. I showered, dressed in my best navy blue pantsuit, the one I wore for important occasions, and carefully applied my makeup. I wanted to look strong, dignified, like the woman who had worked her whole life and deserved respect. At 8 o'clock sharp, I was ringing the doorbell of the house that I had paid for, but that legally no longer belonged to me. Jessica opened the door in a bathrobe, a coffee mug in her hand, and a look of surprise that quickly morphed into something resembling guilt. "Eleanor, what a surprise, so early," she said without inviting me in, partially blocking the entrance with her body. "Ethan already left for work. Did you need something specific?" "Yes," I replied with a calm that surprised even me. "I need to talk about the sale of my house." Her face instantly turned pale, and the coffee mug trembled slightly in her hand. "Oh, and I also want you to explain where the money came from for the new car, the beach vacation, and all these kitchen renovations I see you've done." In that moment, I knew that she knew that I knew. And I also knew that the war was just beginning. Jessica finally let me in, but her demeanor had changed completely. She was no longer the smiling daughter-in-law who asked for my advice on decorating. Now she walked ahead of me with quick, nervous steps, leading me to the living room while shouting up to the second floor, "Maya, hurry up or you're going to be late for school." Her voice sounded forced, like she was acting in a poorly rehearsed play. The house was unrecognizable, not just because of the upgrades I had seen in the photos, but because of how they had arranged everything. My eyes scanned every detail. The Italian leather sofa that cost more than my 3-month salary, the giant flat-screen television mounted on the wall, the original paintings I recognized from an expensive downtown gallery, all paid for with my money, while they had told me they barely had enough for basic expenses. "Look, Eleanor," Jessica began, perching on the edge of the expensive sofa. "I know this might seem confusing, but everything is perfectly legal. The papers you signed?" "The papers I signed under false pretenses," I interrupted, keeping my voice steady, though inside my heart was beating like a war drum. "The papers I signed believing it was a temporary loan, not a permanent gift." Her expression changed instantly. The mask of fake concern fell away, revealing something much colder, more calculated. "You can't prove that," she said, crossing her arms. "Your signature is on every document. No one forced you to do anything." Just then, Maya came down the stairs with her school backpack, and the tension in the room was so thick you could cut it with a knife. My granddaughter looked at both of us, obviously sensing something was wrong but not understanding exactly what. "Hi, Grandma," she said, coming over to give me a kiss on the cheek. "Everything's fine, sweetheart." "Everything is perfect," I replied, hugging her and breathing in the scent of strawberry shampoo that always lingered in her hair. "I'm just talking with your mom about some grown-up business." After Maya left for school, the conversation became much more direct. Jessica wasn't pretending anymore. "Look, Eleanor, the situation is simple. The house is legally ours. You decided to help us, and that was very generous of you. But now we need to sell it because we have other plans." "Other plans?" I asked, feeling anger begin to boil in my stomach. "Ethan got a job opportunity in Denver. It's a major promotion, with a much better salary. We're moving there next month." She paused, studying my reaction. "By selling this house, we'll have enough money to buy something better there and start a new life. A new life with my money, without consulting me, without even a proper goodbye," I thought. "And what about me?" I asked. though I already knew the answer. You have your house, you have your pension, you're well established here. We're young. We have to think about our future, about Maya's future. Her voice sounded as if she were explaining something obvious to a foolish child. You can't expect us to stay here forever just because you want to keep the family close. That sentence was like a slap in the face. After everything I had done for them, after handing them my life savings, I was the selfish one for wanting to keep the family together. I was the one who didn't understand that they had more important things to do. But what hurt the most came next. Jessica stood up from the sofa and walked to the window, turning her back to me as if I were no longer important to the conversation. Besides, Eleanor, I think it's time you understood that you're not getting any younger. Living alone at your age can be dangerous. Maybe you should consider moving into a senior living facility where they can take proper care of you. The silence that followed was deafening. Me, who had worked until I was 60, who kept my house immaculate, who cooked for the whole family every Sunday, who tended my garden and paid all my bills on time. Suddenly, I was a helpless old woman who needed to be put in a home. I rose from the sofa with all the dignity I could muster. I understand the situation perfectly, I said, walking toward the door. You have made your decisions, and now I will make mine. When I reached the entrance, I turned around one last time. Oh, and Jessica, one more thing. This conversation has clarified a lot for me, especially about the kind of people you really are. I left that house for the last time without looking back. But in my mind, the first elements of a plan they never saw coming were already forming. That same afternoon, while they thought I was at home crying like a defeated old woman, I was sitting in the office of Arthur Caldwell, the best family law attorney in the city. His office smelled of old books and strong coffee, and the walls were covered with diplomas and certificates that spoke of 40 years of experience defending complicated cases. Mrs. Miller, he said, after carefully reviewing all the documents I had brought, this is a classic case of familial financial abuse. Unfortunately, it's more common than people think. His glasses slid down his nose a bit as he examined each page with the meticulousness of a surgeon. The good news is, we have several legal options. I explained everything. The broken promises, the lies about a temporary loan, the deception with the documents I signed, the expensive upgrades made with money they supposedly didn't have, and especially that morning's conversation where it became clear everything had been planned from the start. Is there anything I can do? I asked, feeling a small spark of hope for the first time in days. Mr. Caldwell smiled in a way that reminded me of my father when he had an ace up his sleeve during a game of dominoes. Ma'am, not only is there something we can do, there are several things we are going to do. And all of them are completely legal. He opened a new folder and began to write notes quickly. First, we are going to initiate a lawsuit for fraud and undue influence. Second, we are going to request an investigation of all their recently acquired assets. And third, he paused, looking at me directly in the eyes with an expression I couldn't quite interpret. Third, what? I asked. Third, I need you to tell me exactly everything you remember about the purchase of that house. Every detail, every conversation, every promise they made you. Because I have a suspicion there are more irregularities here than what appears in these papers. For the next 2 hours, we reconstructed the entire story from the beginning. Mr. Caldwell took constant notes, asked specific questions, and every so often, he would raise his eyebrows as if he had discovered something important. When I finished telling him everything, he leaned back in his chair and sighed. Mrs. Miller, what you've just told me constitutes not only civil fraud, but possibly criminal fraud. Your son and daughter-in-law could face criminal charges. He paused, studying my reaction. Are you prepared to see this through to the end? For the first time in months, I felt completely sure of something. Mr. Caldwell, for 40 years I worked hard to save that money. I cleaned houses, I sewed clothes, I sold pies. I deprived myself of vacations and luxuries so I could have something to leave for my family. If they decided to steal from me and treat me like a fool, then they are going to meet the woman I truly am. That night, following Mr. Caldwell's precise instructions, I began my own investigation. I created fake social media accounts so I could see all the content Ethan and Jessica had been posting for the last few months. What I discovered kept me awake, not from sadness, but from pure indignation. Not only had they been showing off the lifestyle they were living with my money, but they had also been bad-mouthing me publicly in a private Facebook group called Northwood High School Parents. Jessica had posted several derogatory comments about controlling mothers-in-law and mothers who don't know when to let their adult children go. In one particularly cruel post, she had written, "My mother-in-law thinks that just because she helped us financially, she has the right to an opinion on our decisions. Some parents don't understand that their kids are grown up." But the worst came when I found a video Ethan had uploaded to his Instagram 2 weeks after my birthday. It was a video of him and Jessica toasting with expensive champagne in an elegant restaurant. The caption read, "When you finally break free from toxic family expectations and can live your own life. Number freedom, number new beginnings, number no more drama." That video had been filmed with my money at a dinner that cost more than my monthly grocery bill, celebrating their freedom from me after they had stolen my life savings. That night, alone in my house, I didn't cry. Instead, I opened a bottle of wine I had been saving for a special occasion. I poured myself a glass and toasted myself. To the woman who is about to show them what having more important things to do really means, I said aloud, and drank the wine, savoring every drop as if it were the first taste of my new life. The next day, Mr. Caldwell called me early. "Mrs. Miller, I have news. Very good news. It turns out your son and daughter-in-law made a very serious mistake. When they registered the property transfer, they did it before the minimum legal waiting period for family-related transfers was complete," Mr. Caldwell explained, his voice sounding like music to my ears. "Technically, the title transfer is voidable until a full 6 months have passed from the original filing." My heart began to beat faster. What does that mean, exactly? It means that you, as the original grantor, have the legal right to revoke the transfer and reclaim the property within the next 48 hours. After that, the current buyer will have acquired rights. His voice grew more serious. "Mrs. Miller, if we are going to act, it has to be right now." I didn't think for a second. Do it. Do whatever is necessary. The next few hours were a whirlwind of paperwork, signatures, and phone calls. Mr. Caldwell pulled strings at the county recorder's office, the courthouse, and even with the notary who had authorized the original transfer. By 6 o'clock that evening, the house was legally back in my name. But the real masterstroke came next. "Now, Mr. Caldwell said, with a smile that would have made any opposing counsel tremble, "we are going to sell this property immediately, before they find out what happened. I have a client who has been looking for exactly this type of house and is willing to pay $610,000 in cash, closing tomorrow morning." I didn't sleep that night, not from anxiety, but from pure adrenaline. I was experiencing something I hadn't felt in years, the power of taking control of my own life. While they slept peacefully in the house they thought they had already sold, I was awake, organizing my perfect revenge. At 8 o'clock the next morning, I was back in Mr. Caldwell's office signing the sale documents. The buyer was a young executive who needed to relocate urgently for work and paid the full price without haggling. By 10 o'clock in the morning, $610,000 were deposited into my bank account. "What's next?" I asked the lawyer, feeling a mix of triumph and nervousness. "Now, we wait," he replied, carefully filing all the documents in a folder marked with my name. The law requires that they be officially notified of the change in ownership. That notice will arrive at their house this afternoon. I decided to have lunch at an elegant restaurant downtown, one of those places I had never dared to enter because they seemed too expensive. I ordered the priciest dish on the menu, a bottle of white wine and dessert. For the first time in years, I felt like an important woman, like someone who deserved to be treated with respect and consideration. As I savored my meal, my phone began to vibrate. First, a text from Ethan. "Mom, we need to talk. Urgently. Come to the house right now." Then another. "Mom, answer the phone." And another. "This is serious. Something is wrong with the house." I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I ordered a coffee and a slice of chocolate cake and sat there enjoying my lunch while my phone continued to ring incessantly. By 3 in the afternoon, I had 23 missed calls and 18 text messages, each more desperate than the last. "Mom, please, we have to talk. We don't understand what's happening. The closing agent says we're not the owners anymore. Mom, answer, please. Finally, I decided to answer. Not because I felt sorry for them, but because I wanted to hear their voices when they realized that the foolish, helpless mother they thought they could manipulate no longer existed. Hello, Ethan, I said, my voice so calm it surprised me. Mom, thank God you answered. Where are you? We need you to come here right now. There's a huge problem with the house. There's no problem at all, I replied, taking a sip of my coffee. The house was sold this morning, just as planned. The silence on the other end of the line was so long I thought we had been disconnected. What did you say? He finally asked, in a voice I barely recognized. I said the house was sold for $610,000. A good price, don't you think? But Mom, that's our house. We had already sold it. We have a signed contract. You had a signed contract, I corrected him. But it turns out that contract was illegal. And since the house legally became mine again, I decided to sell it to whomever I pleased. What followed were 10 minutes of shouting, pleading, threats, and finally, the most pathetic crying I had ever heard in my life. Ethan, my 35-year-old son, sobbing like a 5-year-old because his perfect plan had crumbled. When I hung up the phone, I sat there in that elegant restaurant, surrounded by the murmur of other conversations and the soft clinking of silverware against plates. And for the first time in months, I truly smiled. At 5 in the afternoon, I was back at my house, packing a suitcase with the essentials. Mr. Caldwell had been very clear. Mrs. Miller, after what we did today, they are going to try everything to pressure you. I recommend you leave town for a few days until things cool down. He didn't need to tell me twice. I had already booked a room in a small, quiet hotel 3 hours away in a mountain town where no one knew me. As I was carefully folding my clothes, I heard the sound of a car braking sharply in front of my house. Through the window, I saw Ethan's silver sedan, the one they had bought with my money. The doors flew open violently, and out came Ethan and Jessica, followed by Maya, who had clearly been crying. Their footsteps sounded like hammer blows on the concrete walkway as they approached my door. The banging started before they could even ring the bell. Mom, open this door right now, Ethan yelled, his voice one I hadn't heard since he was a rebellious teenager. We know you're in there. We need to talk. I didn't move from my bedroom. I continued packing with slow, deliberate movements, folding each garment as if it were the most important thing in the world. Every pound on the door, every shout, every desperate plea only confirmed that I had made the right decision. Eleanor, please. Now it was Jessica's voice, but it no longer sounded like the polite, manipulative daughter-in-law. It sounded like a woman on the verge of hysteria. You can't do this. We have rights. We have a contract with our buyer. Maya had remained quiet, but I could hear her silent sobs through the door. That hurt more than all the shouting combined, but not enough to make me change my mind. If my granddaughter was suffering, it was her parents' fault, not mine. For half an hour, they continued to knock, shout, and plead. Ethan got to the point of screaming, Mom, if you don't open up, we're going to have to call the police. This is theft. This is illegal. That's when I decided to answer them. I walked to the door without opening it and spoke loudly enough for them to hear me clearly. Ethan, if you want to call the police, go right ahead. I have all the legal documents proving the house was mine and that the sale you made was illegal. I also have proof of all the money you spent, which you claimed you didn't have. The silence that followed was absolute. Even Maya stopped crying for a moment. Furthermore, I continued, if you call the police, I'll also have to show them the screenshots of all the posts where you bragged about the lifestyle you were living with money you stole from me, including that lovely video where you celebrate being free of me. I heard Jessica whisper something that sounded like, I didn't know she saw that, and Ethan respond with a word I won't repeat. Grandma, Maya said in a small, broken voice, I didn't know about any of this. Please, don't be mad at me. My heart broke in two. I opened the door just a crack and saw my granddaughter with red, swollen eyes, standing between her parents like a hostage in a war she hadn't started. Sweetheart, I said, I could never be mad at you. This is between the adults. You're not to blame for any of this. That's when Ethan completely lost control. Stop manipulating my daughter. You're the one destroying this family. All we did was for our future. Your future? I asked, opening the door completely and looking him in the eyes for the first time in days. Your future built on lies, theft, and disrespect for the woman who gave you life? Is that the future you want? Jessica stepped forward with an expression that tried to be threatening but only managed to look desperate. Eleanor, you don't understand the consequences of what you did. We had already committed that money. We have debts to pay. We have the job in Denver waiting for us. That's not my problem, I replied with a coldness that surprised even me. You made your plans without consulting me. You spent money that wasn't yours, and you lied to me for months. Now, you face the consequences. Ethan looked at me with an expression that mixed fury, disbelief, and something it took me a moment to recognize: fear. Mom, are you really going to destroy your own family over money? I didn't destroy anything, I responded. You destroyed the trust. You destroyed the respect. You destroyed the love I had for this family when you decided to treat me like a fool. I am just picking up the pieces of my dignity. I left them standing in my yard and closed the door. I finished packing, called a cab, and left my house without looking back. In the taxi, watching my neighborhood, my house, my previous life fade away through the window, I felt like a butterfly that had just emerged from its chrysalis. The hotel in the mountains was exactly what I needed. Small, quiet, with a spectacular view of the valley and a staff that asked no questions. My room had a balcony with 2 wicker chairs and a small table where I could have my morning coffee while looking out at a landscape that seemed taken from a postcard. For the first time in months, I was in no hurry to do anything. I didn't have to cook for anyone but myself. I didn't have to worry about the needs of others. For the first 2 days, my phone never stopped ringing. 51 missed calls the first day, 37 the second. The messages had become increasingly dramatic and desperate. Ethan had gone from fury to pleading and finally to veiled threats. Jessica alternated between fake apologies and direct attacks on my character. But there were other messages too from numbers I didn't recognize. On the 3rd day, I decided to read some of those unknown messages. One of them made my blood run cold. Mrs. Miller, this is Attorney Fernandez, legal representative for the Herrera family. My client is very interested in reaching an out-of-court settlement regarding the property issue. Please contact me urgently. Another one said, Mrs. Miller, we are a media company. We would like to interview you about the family conflict that has gone viral on social media. We can offer financial compensation for your testimony. Viral on social media. My heart began to pound. I opened Facebook and Instagram on my phone and searched for Jessica's name. What I found took my breath away. She had posted a 40-minute video on her Facebook page titled, When a Mother Destroys Her Own Family Over Money. In the video, Jessica appeared crying dramatically, with Maya beside her, also crying, telling a completely distorted version of the events. According to her story, I was a greedy old woman who had manipulated legal documents to steal their house after they had generously included me in the purchase. My mother-in-law forced us to put the house in her name, because she said we'd get better credit terms that way, Jessica said between theatrical sobs. We trusted her because she's family. We paid for everything with our savings. We worked day and night on the renovations. And now she says the house was hers and sold it without telling us. The video had over 50,000 views and hundreds of comments, most of them supporting Jessica and condemning me as a toxic mother-in-law and an abusive old woman. They had managed to paint me as the villain of the story, as a cruel woman who had destroyed a young family out of pure malice. But what hurt the most was seeing Maya in the video, my granddaughter, her eyes swollen from crying, saying between whimpers, "My grandma was always good to me. I don't understand why she's doing this. We just want our house back so we can move to Denver like we planned." The video had been shared thousands of times and had already reached local radio shows and gossip blogs. In the comments, people speculated about my mental state, suggesting I must be senile or manipulated by third parties, and some even proposed starting a collection to help this family victimized by elder abuse. I got out of the hotel bed and walked to the balcony. The cool mountain air helped calm me and think clearly. I immediately called Mr. Caldwell. Mrs. Miller, several media outlets have already contacted me about the case, he said before I could even explain what I had seen. I recommend you make no public statement for now. They are playing the victim card, but we have something better: the documented truth. What do you mean? I asked, suddenly feeling very tired. I mean, I have all the proof of what really happened. The original documents where it's clearly established that you were the sole owner. The screenshots of all their posts bragging about their spending. The exact dates that prove they lied about their income. And something else I discovered yesterday. What else? Your son and daughter-in-law applied for a $75,000 bank loan using the house as collateral 3 days before they sold it to the first buyer. Technically, they were committing bank fraud in addition to defrauding you. That information changed everything. This was no longer just a family dispute. It was a fraud case that could have serious criminal consequences. Mr. Caldwell, I said, feeling a strange calm wash over me. I think it's time for the truth to come out. Are you sure? Once we initiate the full legal process, there's no going back. I looked out at the valley from my balcony, where the afternoon sun was painting the mountains in shades of gold, and I thought about all the years I had worked in silence, sacrificed in silence, loved in silence. The time had come for my voice to be heard. I'm sure, I replied. Do whatever is necessary. 3 months later, I was sitting on the terrace of my new house, in a small coastal town, 4 hours away from my old life, watching the sunrise over the ocean while I had my morning coffee. The house was small, but perfect. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with a window overlooking the sea, and a garden where I had planted roses, lavender, and herbs. I had bought it with the money from the sale, and I still had enough left over to live comfortably for many years. The legal process had ended the previous week. Ethan and Jessica faced charges for bank fraud and were sentenced to pay a substantial fine and perform community service. The job in Denver vanished when the company learned of the legal scandal. Jessica's viral video was taken down after Mr. Pange's 25, who'd end. Caldwell presented the real evidence, and several of the media outlets that had run the story had to issue retractions. But my victory wasn't shouted from the rooftops or celebrated with fanfare. It was lived in silence, as true victories should be. Maya had sent me a letter 2 weeks ago, a 6-page handwritten letter, asking for my forgiveness for participating in the video without knowing the whole truth. Grandma, she wrote in her careful teenage script, I understand now that my parents lied to me about a lot of things. I didn't know you had paid for the house completely. I didn't know they had tricked you with the documents. I didn't know they had been spending your money on unnecessary things. I feel terrible for appearing in that video saying things that weren't true. The letter went on to explain that she had decided to go live with her Aunt Norma, Jessica's sister, because she couldn't stand the toxic atmosphere at home anymore. My parents won't stop fighting, blaming each other, and blaming you for everything that's happening to them. But I know they got themselves into this mess. At the end of the letter, Maya wrote, I know you probably don't want anything to do with this family anymore, and I would completely understand. But if you ever forgive me and want to see me, I'll be waiting. I love you, Grandma, and I'm so sorry for everything we put you through. That letter had made me cry for the first time in months, but not from sadness, from relief. My granddaughter, the only innocent person in this whole story, had managed to see the truth for herself. I had replied immediately, inviting her to visit me at my new house during her summer vacation. I wanted to show her my garden, cook with her in my new kitchen, walk along the beach together at sunset. I wanted to show her that true love survives lies and manipulation. Ethan never apologized. In the last messages he sent before I changed my phone number, he continued to blame me for destroying the family and for being a selfish mother. Jessica had tried to contact me through social media with messages that alternated between dramatic apologies and veiled threats. I had blocked all her profiles. I didn't feel hatred toward them. That had been the most surprising part of this whole process, discovering that after all the pain and betrayal, what I felt for my son and daughter-in-law wasn't hatred, but a kind of quiet indifference. They had shown themselves to be people I couldn't trust, people who were willing to hurt someone who loved them for money and convenience. And when you know someone's true nature, you can no longer love them in the same way. I finished my coffee and got up to water the plants in my garden. The roses had started to bloom, and the scent of lavender mixed with the salty sea breeze. As I watered each plant carefully, I thought about the woman I had been 6 months ago, invisible, accommodating, always ready to sacrifice for a family that took her for granted. That woman no longer existed. In her place was a woman who knew her own worth, who had reclaimed her dignity, who had learned that self-love is more important than the approval of others. A woman who had discovered that sometimes, to save what really matters, you have to have the courage to leave everything behind. That afternoon, as I was preparing dinner in my kitchen with a view of the sea, the doorbell rang. It was the mail carrier with a small package for me. There was no return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was from Maya. Inside was a framed photo of the two of us, taken on my birthday the previous year, when everything seemed normal and happy. On the back, in her neat handwriting, she had written, "For the bravest grandma in the world. Thanks for teaching me that standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's survival." I placed the photo on the kitchen windowsill where I could see it while I cooked. Then I turned on the radio, put on some soft music, and continued preparing my dinner. Alone, but not empty. At peace after the storm. That night, before going to sleep, I opened my bedroom windows to listen to the sound of the waves against the shore. For the first time in years, I fell asleep without worries, without anxiety, without fear. I had won something more valuable than money or property. I had gotten my life back. 2 years later, the sound of the doorbell at my seaside home no longer startled me. I had learned to enjoy unexpected visits, the fisherman who came by every Tuesday, Mrs. Gable from 2 houses down who had become my tea-time companion, or the neighborhood kids who came to ask for oranges from my tree. But that Saturday morning when I opened the door, I found a surprise that took my breath away. Maya was standing on my doorstep, but she was no longer the confused, hurt teenager who had visited during vacations. She was a young woman of 18 with a radiant smile and a suitcase in her hand. "Hi, Grandma," she said, and her voice sounded different, more mature, more confident. "I've come to ask you a very big favor." I let her in and made coffee, while she settled on the living room sofa, the same place where we had spent so many hours during her previous visits, talking about life, about her parents' mistakes, about her dreams of studying veterinary medicine and working with marine animals. "I got a full scholarship to study marine biology at the state university," she told me, her eyes shining with excitement. "It's everything I ever wanted, Grandma. But the campus is only an hour from here, and I was wondering if I could maybe stay with you while I study. I promise I won't be a bother. I can help with expenses, work on weekends. I can cook, clean." I didn't let her finish. I stood up from my chair and hugged her with a strength that surprised me. "Sweetheart," I said, feeling tears welling up in my eyes. "This house feels empty without you. Of course, you can stay." That afternoon, as I helped Maya unpack her things in the guest room that had been waiting for her for 2 years, she told me about her life with her Aunt Norma. She told me how she had graduated from high school with excellent grades, how she had worked part-time at a vet clinic to save money, and something that broke my heart. She hadn't spoken to her parents in over a year. "After everything happened, they tried to manipulate me into helping them get money from you," she explained while hanging her clothes in the closet. "They asked me to write you letters, asking you to give them a second chance, to loan them money for some new business." She sat down on the bed and looked at me with a sadness I hadn't seen in her eyes in a long time. "When I refused, they started treating me like I was the enemy. Grandma, do you think I'm a bad person for not wanting a relationship with my own parents?" I sat down next to her and took her hands in mine. "My dear," I said, "sometimes the families we choose are more important than the families we are born into. You chose honesty over blind loyalty. You chose your future over their manipulation. That doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you a strong one." That night, I made a special dinner to celebrate Maya living with me. As we cooked together in my little kitchen, I realized something beautiful. During the 2 years I had lived alone, I had learned to be happy by myself. But having Maya back didn't make me feel dependent or needy. It made me feel complete in a different way, like when you share something good that you already possess, not when you're looking for something you lack. During dinner, Maya told me about her academic plans, her dreams of working in marine conservation, her hopes of making a difference in the world. I listened to her with the same admiration I had felt when she was a little girl telling me about the books she was reading, but now her passion had direction and purpose. "Grandma," she said as we washed the dishes together, "there's something I never told you, but I think about it every day." "What is it, sweetheart?" "Thank you for teaching me that it's okay to say no, that it's okay to set boundaries, that it's okay to walk away from people who hurt you, even if they're family. She paused, carefully drying a plate before continuing. If I hadn't seen how you defended yourself, I don't think I ever would have had the courage to get away from my parents when they started being toxic with me too. That night, after Maya had gone to bed, I went out to the terrace with a cup of chamomile tea and sat watching the ocean under the full moon. The sound of the waves was my favorite music now, a constant symphony reminding me that life, like the sea, is always in motion, always changing, always offering new possibilities. I thought about the woman I had been 4 years ago, sitting at an empty birthday table, waiting for a family that never came. That woman had been broken by betrayal, but from that fracture, someone entirely new had been born. A woman who knew that true love does not require the sacrifice of one's own dignity, that healthy relationships are built on mutual respect, not on familial obligation. My phone vibrated with a text. It was from Mrs. Gable, my neighbor, who had seen Maya arrive that morning. "So happy to see your granddaughter back. I'll bring over a cake tomorrow to celebrate. It's beautiful to see a family that truly loves each other. A family that truly loves each other." Those words resonated in my mind as I finished my tea. For years, I had believed that loving your family meant putting up with anything, forgiving any abuse, sacrificing anything to maintain unity. Now, I knew that true love requires boundaries, respect, and the courage to walk away when necessary. Maya and I were a small family, but a real one. A family built on mutual choice, on genuine affection, on the shared desire to grow and be better people. We didn't need anyone else to be complete. Before going inside, I took one last look at the ocean. Tomorrow, a new chapter would begin, being the grandmother who supports her granddaughter's dreams, the woman who found peace after the storm, the person who learned that sometimes, to save what really matters, you have to have the courage to leave it all behind. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of the future. After a full day of teaching at the public school, I came home exhausted. I saw a new lock on the pantry. "It's so you don't touch our things," my daughter-in-law said without looking at me. I smiled without saying anything. The next day, the padlock was gone, and in its place, I left a letter. One that made her hands tremble as she read it. Yes, that's right. Just as you're hearing it, a padlock. In my own house. On the pantry I had built myself 25 years ago, when my Arthur was still breathing and this house smelled like fresh coffee and pastries in the morning. But let me tell you from the beginning, because this story doesn't start with a padlock. It starts long before, when I still believed that being a good mother meant giving everything without expecting anything in return. My name is Eleanor. I am 67 years old, and for 42 of them, I was an elementary school teacher at Lincoln Elementary in the Jefferson Park neighborhood. I taught over 800 children to read. I gave them kindness when their own homes didn't. And I never, ever imagined that my own son would make me feel like an intruder in the place where I raised 3 children and buried a husband. That Tuesday, I arrived tired. My legs ached after standing all afternoon supervising recess. I was 65 then, just about to retire. I came in through the back door, as always, and went straight to the pantry to get the vanilla wafers I kept for my afternoon tea. My one little treat after a long day. And there it was, a new, shiny, silver padlock hanging from the door of my pantry, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. I froze. My purse slipped from my shoulder. For a second, I thought I was in the wrong house, that I'd walked into the wrong door, but no. There was the cracked tile by the stove that Arthur never got around to fixing. There were the basil plants in the window. It was my kitchen. My house. Then I heard her voice. "Oh, you're home." Claire walked into the kitchen, drying her hands on a dish towel. She was wearing that pink blouse that, according to her, cost $250 at a boutique downtown. The same amount of money I spent on groceries for the entire week. "What is this?" I asked, pointing to the lock. My voice came out softer than I wanted. I still didn't understand what I was seeing. She didn't even look up. "Oh, that. Ryan and I bought some special things for us. You know, imported goods, organic olive oil, that sort of thing. And, well, we don't want them getting mixed up with the other stuff. It's just to avoid problems." To avoid problems? As if I were the problem? "But, Claire, this is my pantry. My house. She finally looked at me, and in those brown eyes that I once thought were sweet, I saw only coldness. Oh, Eleanor, don't take it personally. It's just organization. You have your space, we have ours. It's the healthiest way to live together, don't you think? My space. In my own house. As if I were a tenant they were tolerating. I wanted to scream, to rip that lock off and throw it out the window. But something inside me, that part that was always a teacher, the part that learned to measure every word, made me hold my tongue. I smiled. Of course, dear, whatever you say. And I went to my room. I didn't cry that night. I was too furious to cry. I sat on the bed I shared with Arthur for 38 years. And for the first time in 3 years, I allowed myself to see clearly what I had been ignoring. My house was no longer mine. It hadn't happened overnight. It was like mold growing in the walls. You don't see it until it's everywhere. If this story is stirring something inside you, subscribe to the channel. Because what comes next, not even I saw it coming. 3 years ago, when Arthur died of a heart attack while watering his geraniums, my world collapsed. I didn't just lose my husband, I lost the sound of his footsteps in the morning, the smell of his aftershave when he got ready. That way he'd hug me from behind while I was cooking. The house became a giant echo. Ryan, my youngest son, came to the funeral with Claire. They had been married for 2 years. He hugged me and said, "Mom, we're not going to leave you alone. We'll move in with you until you're feeling better." Temporary, he said, just until I got back on my feet. But temporary turned into a month, then 6, then a year. And suddenly, 3 years had passed, and not only had they not left, they had taken complete possession. At first, it was subtle. Claire started to help by reorganizing the kitchen. "It's just more practical this way, Eleanor." My grandmother's Blue Ridge china ended up shoved in a top cabinet I couldn't even reach. My old, seasoned cast-iron skillets were replaced with Teflon pans, which she said were healthier. Then came the furniture. "That armchair is so old, Eleanor. We're going to donate it." And my brown armchair, where Arthur read the Sunday paper every week, disappeared. In its place, they put a modern gray sofa that was nice, yes, but it wasn't mine. The living room became their home office. My sewing room was filled with boxes of her things. The dining room, where we celebrated every birthday, every Christmas, was now decorated with abstract art I hadn't chosen. And I, like an idiot, let it happen. Because I thought it was love, that they were helping me modernize, that this was just life with young people. But the lock was different. The lock was a message. That night, lying in the dark, I remembered something I told a student years ago. Her name was Daisy, and her older sister treated her badly. She took her things, made her feel invisible in her own family. "Daisy," I told her, "never let anyone make you feel small in your own life, not even for love." And I had done exactly that. I looked at the ceiling. The shadows from the street lamp moved like ghosts. And then, for the first time in a long time, I felt something stronger than sadness. I felt rage. And that rage, I would soon discover, was exactly what I needed to wake up. Because what Claire didn't know is that teachers learn to read between the lines. And I had just read her message perfectly. What she also didn't know was that I knew how to write, too. Wait until you see what I did with that lock, and what I discovered later, on his laptop. The next day, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't had in years. Like when you take off dirty glasses and suddenly see all the details you'd been ignoring. I got up early, as always. I made my coffee in the old drip coffee maker they still allowed me to use, because the Italian pod machine was just for them. I sat in the small space left for me at the breakfast table, and I started to remember. It wasn't sudden. It was like water eroding stone, drop by drop, until you don't recognize your own home. I let my mind travel back 3 years, to the day of Arthur's funeral. It was unbearably hot for November. Street, James Church was packed. Fellow teachers, neighbors, his buddies from poker night, the ladies at the corner store where he bought his cigars on the sly because I nagged him about them. Ryan arrived with Claire. She wore a simple black dress, and her hair pulled back. She hugged me gently and said, "I'm here for whatever you need, Eleanor." Her voice sounded sincere, or maybe I just needed to believe it was. After the burial, When everyone had gone and the house was left in that awful silence only the newly widowed know, Ryan took my hands. "Mom, you can't stay alone. Not now. I'll be fine, son. Your father taught me to be strong." "I know, but we're going to stay with you for a while. Just until you get back on your feet. The house is huge. We have plenty of space." Claire nodded at his side, with that smile that seemed kind to me then. "It's temporary, Eleanor. A few months, tops. Besides, this way we can save for a down payment on our own house, and you won't be alone. It's perfect for everyone." Perfect for everyone. What a well-wrapped lie. The first few days were good. Claire cooked, cleaned, and accompanied me to parent-teacher conferences when I didn't have the energy to go alone. Ryan fixed things around the house that had been broken for years. The water heater, the lock on the garden gate, the leak in the bathroom, I felt accompanied. Less empty. But the third week, Claire started with her suggestions. "Oh, Eleanor, these curtains are so old. What if we buy new ones? I have a really good eye for decorating." They were the terracotta-colored curtains Arthur and I had picked out when we remodeled the living room, matching the tile floors. But I was so emotionally exhausted I just said, "Fine, dear, whatever you think." A week later, my terracotta curtains were in the trash. In their place, there were minimalist white ones that let in too much light and made the room feel cold. Then came the dining room. "These landscape paintings are so dated. Look, I bought these at a gallery. Modern art. It gives the room personality." The landscapes were from our honeymoon trip up the coast to Maine. Every time I saw them, I remembered him in that little inn, laughing because we had gotten lost looking for a plaza. But when I protested timidly, Claire had already packed them. "Don't worry, I put them in a box. Maybe you'll want to see them someday." Someday. As if my own history were optional in my own house. The changes kept coming like waves. Each one small, each one well-intentioned. My collection of china. It takes up too much space. Let's put it up top. My plants in the garden. They're too messy. I'm going to reorganize them. The bookcase in the living room with Arthur's novels. These books are ancient. Should we donate them? And I, still stunned by grief, just nodded. Because I thought I was being difficult, old-fashioned, clinging to the past. But the real change came when they started modifying the routines. Sundays used to be sacred in this house. My two daughters, Sarah and Emily, would come with my grandchildren. We'd make a big pot roast or chili, whatever we felt like. The house would fill with laughter, with kids running around, with that beautiful chaos of a family gathered. 3 weeks after they moved in, Claire suggested, "What if we do these dinners every other Sunday? Ryan and I really need our Sundays to rest." Then it was, "What if we make it monthly?" And then they just stopped. One Sunday, Sarah showed up unannounced with a cake and flowers. Claire opened the door in her pajamas, looking annoyed. "Oh, Sarah, we didn't know you were coming. We don't have anything prepared." Ryan and I were just about to head out. My daughter looked for me. I was in the kitchen, embarrassed, not knowing what to say. "I thought we still did family dinners," Sarah said, her voice tight. "Well, we all live together now. We just need to coordinate better, don't you think?" Coordinate. As if seeing my own daughter required an appointment. Sarah left the cake on the table, gave me a cold kiss on the cheek, and left. She didn't come back for 2 months. My friends got the same treatment. My best friend, Carol, who I'd had coffee with every Thursday for 20 years, stopped coming. The last time she arrived, Claire was doing yoga in the living room with techno music blasting. "Oh, sorry, Carol. I didn't know you were coming. This is my workout time." Carol, uncomfortable among the yoga mats and the incense Claire had lit, drank her coffee quickly and left. "You should let me know when your friends are coming," Claire told me later, not looking up from her phone. "So I don't have to interrupt my schedule." Her schedule. In my living room. In my house. Little by little, my social life vanished, and with it vanished the witnesses to what was happening. But the worst was yet to come. The worst was when I started to notice that Claire wasn't just changing the house, she was changing my son. Ryan had always been affectionate. He used to call me every other day before they moved in. He'd ask how I was, tell me about his job at the hardware store, make bad jokes that made me smile. But now, living under the same roof, he barely spoke to me. He'd get home late from work and go straight to their room, If I tried to ask about his day, he'd answer in monosyllables. Fine, tired, we'll talk later. But later never came. One night, I heard them arguing in their bedroom. The wall was thin. Your mom asked if we can take her to the doctor on Tuesday, Ryan said. Why? She's a grown woman. She can go by herself. Claire, she's my mom. Exactly. She's your mom, not mine. I have enough to do working and keeping this house in order. I'm not going to be her nurse, too. There was silence. I waited for Ryan to defend me. I waited for him to say something, anything, but he said nothing. And in that silence, I understood something terrible. My son was choosing her over me. Not dramatically or cruelly, just with silence, with absence, with letting her speak without contradicting her. I got into bed trembling, not from cold, but from helpless rage. The next day, I went to the doctor alone. And just like that, I was alone at the grocery store, alone at parent-teacher conferences even though I was about to retire, alone in this full house that felt emptier every day. Claire started cooking only for herself and Ryan. She said it was because they were on a special diet. They left their dirty dishes for me to wash. They occupied the living room TV for their shows. They played music I didn't understand. They had visitors they didn't introduce me to. And I just got smaller, a little more invisible each day in my own life. Until the lock, and that lock was the last straw, because I realized something. They weren't sharing my house. They were taking it from me. You can't believe it, but what they didn't know is that I still had an ace up my sleeve, something not even Ryan knew about. My son looked at me like I was a piece of old furniture in the way, and that hurt more than 1,000 locks. Ryan was born on a July dawn, with thunder outside and my hand squeezing Arthur's until it turned purple. It was a difficult birth. 36 hours of labor. But when I first held him on my chest, with his little eyes barely open and that cry that tore my soul, I swore I would protect him from everything. I never imagined that one day I would need to protect myself from him. Or rather, from his silence. Because Ryan didn't hurt me with shouts or insults. He hurt me by disappearing, by becoming a ghost who lived in my house but no longer lived with me. It was Wednesday. I remember because on Wednesdays I got home from school early, at 2 in the afternoon, and I used to find him in the kitchen having lunch. We would talk about everything, about his job at the hardware store, how the customers were, about that boss who, according to him, didn't even know how to use a screwdriver. But that Wednesday, 3 days after the lock incident, I came home and the house was silent. Claire wasn't home. Ryan was. I saw him sitting in the living room, scowling at his phone. "Son," I said from the doorway, "have you eaten? I can make us some eggs and bacon." He barely looked up. "Not hungry, Mom, thanks," and went back to his screen. I stood there, my bag still on my shoulder, feeling like I had just spoken to a wall. "Are you okay?" "Yeah." "Something happen at work?" "No." "Ryan, look at me." He sighed. That long sigh you use when someone is bothering you. He put the phone down on the couch and finally looked at me, but his eyes were empty, as if he saw me but didn't recognize me. "What is it, Mom?" "That's what I'm asking you. We don't talk anymore. You don't tell me anything. You live here, but it's like you're not here." He ran his hand through his hair, that gesture he'd made since he was a kid when he was uncomfortable. "I'm just tired. Work is tough. Don't take it personally." Don't take it personally. The same words Claire used about the lock. "What about Sunday? Sarah told me you invited her and her family for lunch, but you didn't tell me." His face changed. He tensed up. "It was a last-minute thing. I thought you had plans." "What plans would I have? I live here. This is my house." "Mom." "Don't start." "Start what? Wanting to talk to my own son?" He stood up from the couch. He wasn't looking me in the eye anymore. "Look, Claire and I are trying to build our life. We need space. We can't always be thinking about, you know." "About me? You can't be thinking about me?" "It's not that." "Then what is it?" Silence. That damned silence that had become his answer for everything. "I have to go," he said finally. "Claire is waiting for me." And he left. Just like that, leaving me with words stuck in my throat and my heart in pieces. That night I couldn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling, remembering the boy Ryan used to be. The one who would climb into my bed when he had nightmares. The one who drew pictures for me in elementary school and proudly taped them to the fridge. The one who would hug me tight and say, "When I grow up, I'm going to build you a huge house, Mom. With a big yard and everything." Where did that boy go? The following days were worse. Ryan started avoiding me completely. He'd leave before I got up. He'd come home late when I was already in my room. And when we did cross paths in the kitchen or the hallway, he'd look down and hurry past, as if I were an inconvenient stranger. But what finally broke me was what I discovered a week later. It was Saturday morning. Claire had left early for the salon. That weekly routine that she claimed was essential and cost $200 every time. Ryan was in the shower, and I, tidying the living room as I always did, found a manila envelope forgotten between the sofa cushions. I didn't want to snoop. I really didn't. But the envelope had the bank's logo, and it was open. Inside was a bank statement. My son's. And there was also a piece of paper in his handwriting. A note he had written to me 2 years ago, when he asked to borrow money. My hands started to tremble as I read it. "Mom, I promise I'll pay you back the $80,000 as soon as we get the loan approved. It's for the down payment on our house. Claire and I already found a perfect place out in Highlands Ranch. We're so excited to start. I swear on Dad's memory, I'll pay you back. Love, Ryan." $80,000. The savings Arthur and I had put together for years for our retirement. The money I was saving for emergencies, so I wouldn't be a burden to anyone in my old age. I lent it to him because he was my son, because I trusted him, because he told me it was for his house. But according to the bank statement in my hands, dated just 1 month prior, there was no house. There was a charge for $70,000 to Premium Auto Group, a car. They had bought a luxury SUV with my money and the bank loan, and they never told me. I felt the floor move. I sat down on the sofa because my legs wouldn't hold me. I read the statement over and over, looking for some mistake, some explanation other than the obvious one. But there was no mistake. My son had lied to me. He had used me. He had taken my life savings and spent it on a whim to please his wife. I heard the shower turn off, Ryan's footsteps approaching. I quickly put the papers back in the envelope and left it where it was. When he came out, his hair wet and a towel around his neck, he looked at me, surprised. "Oh, you're here?" "Yes. Just tidying up." He nodded, uncomfortable. He went to the sofa, grabbed the envelope without a word, and went to his room. He didn't even pretend to explain. That afternoon, when Claire returned with her hair freshly styled and her nails painted bright red, I saw her differently. I watched her get into that brand new gray SUV parked outside, the one they supposedly bought with their savings. With my savings, and something inside me broke for good. It wasn't just the money. It was the betrayal. It was knowing that my own son saw me as a bank, as someone he could take from without giving back, as someone whose needs didn't matter. That night, while they ate dinner in the kitchen, talking and laughing as if nothing was wrong, I stayed in my room. I didn't cry. I was out of tears. Instead, I felt something cold and clear, a decision forming like ice in my chest. I opened my closet, moved the old shoeboxes, and I took out the blue tin box my mother left me before she died. Inside were things Ryan didn't know about. Things Claire could never imagine. Documents, deeds, and a will that was still in my favor. Because it turns out my son had forgotten something very important. This house had an owner, and that owner was still alive, still sane. And now, she was very, very angry. What came next, neither of us saw coming. But when I did it, it changed everything forever. In the back of my closet, I kept something they didn't know existed. My real power. The blue tin box was barely a foot long. It had faded flowers painted on the lid and a small dent in the corner. A souvenir from when it was dropped during the move to this house, 25 years ago. To anyone else, it was just an old, worthless object. But to me, it was a war chest. I took it out that Saturday night, after discovering the truth about the money. I placed it on my bed carefully, like someone unearthing something sacred. My hands trembled as I opened the rusty lid. The smell of old paper hit me first, Then I saw what was inside. Yellowed envelopes, carefully folded documents, photographs, and a black notebook with frayed corners. My mother's notebook. There, in her slanted, precise handwriting, were all the lessons she gave me before she died. Eleanor, she told me on her last lucid day, her eyes already dimmed by the cancer, but her voice firm. Never, ever, let anyone think you're stupid just because you're kind. Kindness is not weakness, and a woman who knows when to stay silent is more dangerous than 100 screaming men. I smiled, remembering her. My mother had been a teacher too, and she taught me that information is power. I pulled out the first document, the deed to the house. Original, sealed, notarized. In my name, Eleanor Monica Reynolds, widow. Not a single letter mentioned Ryan or Claire or anyone else. This house was mine, completely. No debt, no mortgage, no conditions. I had inherited it from my parents when they passed, and Arthur and I had remodeled it with our own savings. Every brick, every window, every tile in the bathroom had been paid for with the sweat of 2 teachers who worked for 40 years without stopping. Ryan knew that, or at least he used to. But maybe Claire had made him forget, or maybe he had chosen to forget because it was convenient to think this house would be his someday. I pulled out the second document, my will. I had made it 5 years ago, when Arthur and I decided to get our affairs in order. Back then, it left the house divided equally among my 3 children, Ryan, Sarah, and Emily. But that will could be changed, and a dark part of me, one that had been dormant for too long, began to consider that possibility very seriously. I kept looking. Copies of the utility bills, water, gas, property taxes, all in my name. All paid by me for the last 3 years, despite the $200 a month Ryan and Claire contributed, which barely covered their groceries. $200. A joke. The property taxes alone were $800 every quarter. The electric, $200. The gas, $100. Maintenance, repairs, unexpected costs. I paid for all of it with my teacher's pension. My $2,500 a month pension, evaporating to maintain a house for 3 people where only I was contributing real money. But the most interesting thing was at the bottom of the box. A white business card with blue lettering. Patrick Nolan, attorney at law, family and estate law. Patrick had been my student in 3rd grade, over 30 years ago. A skinny, serious kid who always read during recess. Now he was one of the most respected lawyers in the state, and he owed me. I had convinced his mother not to pull him out of school when she wanted to put him to work. Miss Reynolds, he'd said at Arthur's funeral, squeezing my hand tightly. Anything you need, whatever it is, just call. You changed my life. I looked at the card, then at the documents, and then, for the first time in weeks, I felt something that wasn't sadness or rage. He felt control. The next morning, Sunday, I waited for Ryan and Claire to leave. They had plans to have brunch with her parents. Another one of those gatherings I was never invited to. As soon as I heard the car pull away, I picked up my phone and dialed Patrick's number. He answered on the 3rd ring. Miss Reynolds? Patrick, dear, I'm sorry to bother you on a Sunday. You are never a bother. Are you okay? Did something happen? The genuine concern in his voice almost made me cry. It had been so long since someone had truly worried about me. I need your help. I need to review some documents, and maybe make some changes. There was a pause. Changes to your will? Among other things. May I ask what's going on? And then, sitting there on my bed with the blue box open in front of me, I told him everything. The lock, the humiliations, the $80,000, the way my own home had become a prison where I was the intruder. Patrick listened without interrupting. When I finished, his silence was different. It wasn't discomfort. It was calculation, thought, planning. Miss Reynolds, do you have proof of all this? I have receipts. I have the bank statement I found. I have text messages where Ryan promised to pay me back. And the house is entirely in your name? Completely. No debt. Nothing. Perfect. His voice sounded firmer. Then here's what we're going to do. For the next hour, Patrick explained a plan. It wasn't revenge. It was protection. It was setting legal boundaries that Claire and Ryan couldn't break. First, update my will with a different notary. One, they didn't know. Leave everything to my daughters, with a special clause. Ryan could only inherit if he paid me back the $80,000 before my death. If he didn't, his share would be divided between Sarah and Emily. Second, get a notarized inventory of all my assets inside the house. Furniture, appliances, jewelry, everything. To make it clear what was mine and what was theirs. Third, prepare a legal ultimatum. If they didn't start paying a fair rent calculated at $5,000 a month, which was cheap for a house this size, or leave within 3 months, I could start eviction proceedings. But Patrick, I said, my voice breaking, he's my son. I know, Miss Reynolds. And that's why I'm giving him options that don't involve kicking him out on the street tomorrow. But you have to protect yourself. What they are doing to you, it's not love. It's abuse. That word hit me like cold water. Abuse. Was that what it was? Could you call it abuse when it came from your own child? Think about it, Patrick continued. But don't take too long. The longer you wait, the harder it will be to get your house and your peace back. We hung up. I sat on the bed, surrounded by papers, feeling like I had just crossed an invisible line. But the line had already been crossed. Just not by me. I put everything back in the blue box. I hid it in the back of the closet, behind the winter boxes that no one ever touched. When Ryan and Claire came home that afternoon, they found me in the kitchen, making chicken soup, as always. Like the harmless old woman they thought I was. Smells good, Ryan said, surprised to see me cooking. I thought we were on a diet, Claire added with a sharp tone. I smiled. That smile I had perfected over 40 years of dealing with difficult parents. It's just for me. You two do your own thing. Claire blinked, confused by my neutral tone. Ryan looked at me with something that almost resembled guilt, but neither said anything, and I just kept stirring my soup, calm, while in my mind, the pieces of a chessboard they didn't even know existed were already moving, because I had learned something important. The person who shouts the loudest doesn't always win. Sometimes, the winner is the one who knows how to wait in silence, with a teacher's patience and a surgeon's precision. And I had waited long enough. But before I could make my next move, something happened that almost ruined everything. Something that made me question if I really knew the people I was living with. That day, in front of the whole family, they treated me like I was nothing. But I just let them talk. Because every word was just more rope to hang themselves with. Ryan's birthday, 35 years old. Before, those dates were sacred in our family. Arthur would wake up early to hang colorful streamers. I would bake his favorite angel food cake with strawberries. Sarah and Emily would arrive with brightly wrapped presents and hugs that lasted forever. But this year was different. I'm organizing something small, Claire told me 2 weeks before, while painting her nails in the living room. Just us and my family. Something intimate. What about the girls? I asked, meaning my daughters. Oh, Eleanor, you know how they are. They always end up arguing over silly things. Better to avoid the drama. They didn't argue over silly things. They argued because Claire treated them with the same contempt she treated me. But Ryan never defended them. And the food? I tried again. Can I make the special lasagna Ryan loves, or... Don't worry. I'm catering everything. You just... relax. Relax. As if I were a guest in my own house, at my own son's birthday. The day arrived. Saturday, April 23rd. That sticky mid-year heat. Early that morning, Claire started transforming the house. She took down the paintings I had discreetly rehung. She put out modern centerpieces with artificial flowers. She changed the tablecloths to minimalist gray ones that, according to her, matched the decor. I watched her from the kitchen doorway, invisible, as she commanded and organized in my house as if it were hers. Ryan, move that chair. No, not there. More to the corner. Perfect. My son obeyed without a word, moving furniture from one side to the other, sweating in his white t-shirt. Do you need help? I offered. Claire didn't even turn around. No, we're almost done. Oh, actually, could you go to your room while we set up? We're using the living room, and we don't want anything in the way. Anything in the way. Or anyone. I went to my room like a scolded child. I closed the door and sat on the bed, feeling the heat rise in my neck, the humiliation, the contained rage. But I stayed quiet. I took out my cell phone from the nightstand. I put it on silent. I set it on my dresser, strategically propped against a book, with the camera aimed at the partially open door. I started recording. If my years as a teacher had taught me anything, it was this. When someone is hurting you, document. Words are forgotten. Witnesses change their stories. But a video doesn't lie. At 6 o'clock in the evening, the guests started to arrive. First, Claire's parents, Walter and Beatrice. Yes, that was her name. And believe me, it was perfect for how insufferable she was. Beatrice entered wearing a floral dress and expensive sunglasses, carrying a cake from a fancy bakery downtown. She looked around the living room with a critical eye, as if judging if it was all up to her standards. "Oh, honey, it looks wonderful. You can tell you have great taste." "Your great taste?" "In my house, with my furniture shoved into corners." Then Claire's sister, Megan, arrived with her husband and 2 spoiled kids, who immediately started running through the house, screaming like wild animals. One of them knocked over my African violet. No one said a word. They didn't even pick it up. I stood in the hallway, dressed in my Sunday blouse and pearl earrings, waiting for someone to greet me. No one did. Claire walked right past me, as if I were part of the wall. Walter glanced at me and nodded, but said nothing. Beatrice flat out ignored me. Ryan? Ryan was too busy opening bottles of wine and putting on music. I sat in the corner chair, the one they had shoved next to the bookcase, and I watched. The dining room table was filled with food I hadn't cooked. Sushi, fine cuts of meat, gourmet salads, bottles of wine that cost more than $50 each, artisanal bread, French desserts, all paid for with the money they supposedly didn't have, the same money that justified them not paying me fair rent. "A toast to my husband," Claire raised her glass, "to his 35 years and to this being the start of our best chapter together." Our best chapter. As if I hadn't been there for his first 35 years. As if I hadn't given birth to him, raised him, educated him, supported him when he was unemployed, consoled him when his girlfriends left him. Everyone toasted. Glasses clinked. Laughter filled the room. And no one, absolutely no one, toasted me. Then Beatrice, with 3 glasses of wine in her and that condescending tone of people who think they're superior, dropped the bomb. "Oh, Claire, it's so good you two are so patient. Not everyone can stand living with their mother-in-law, right?" She laughed that fake laugh that made my skin crawl. "They must be so grateful to you. Not all modern kids sacrifice like this, taking care of their parents instead of dumping them somewhere. Sacrifice. Taking care of. As if I were the burden." Claire smiled, lowering her gaze with false modesty. "Oh, my mother-in-law, she does what she can. It's hard at her age, right? But we manage, with patience." Mother-in-law. That word, which had sounded affectionate in the first few months, was now just poison wrapped in honey. "It's just," Megan chimed in, pouring more wine. "I told my husband, when his mom gets old, no way is she moving in with us. Straight to a nursing home. It's healthier for everyone." Laughter erupted. Ryan smiled uncomfortably, but said nothing. "Nothing." Walter added his 2 cents. "Well, I think it's fine to help, up to a point. But there comes a time when the old folks have to understand their cycle is over. Let the young people live." The old folks. They talked about me as if I weren't there, like I was an object to be dealt with eventually. Beatrice looked directly at me for the first time all night. "Right, Eleanor? You understand they need their space. They're young. They have dreams. They can't be burdened with." "Well, you understand." I stayed quiet. I smiled. That smile I had perfected over weeks of enduring insults disguised as advice. And I let them keep talking, because my cell phone was still recording. Every word, every cruel laugh, every dismissive comment. Claire brought out the cake. They sang "Happy Birthday." Ryan blew out the candles. He made a wish. They asked him what he wished for. And he, looking at Claire with loving eyes, said, "I wish that we'll have our own house soon, so we can start our real life. Our real life." As if these 3 years had been a lie. As if I were a temporary obstacle. I stood up from my chair. My legs were shaking, but I kept my back straight. 40 years of standing in front of 30 kids every day had taught me how to have presence. I'm going to my room. Enjoy your party. No one stopped me. No one said, "Don't go." No one asked if I was okay. Claire just muttered, "Rest well." I closed my bedroom door. I stopped the recording. 3 hours and 40 minutes of documented humiliation. I sat on the bed with the phone in my hands. I hit play. I listened to it all again. And this time, I didn't feel sadness. I felt clarity, because they had just given me exactly what I needed. Irrefutable evidence that I wasn't imagining things, that it wasn't my fault, that this was abuse, disguised as living together. I saved the video to the cloud. I made 3 backup copies. I sent one to Patrick Nolan's email with the subject, "Urgent." Additional evidence. Then I lay down. And for the first time in months, I slept soundly. Because I wasn't alone in this war anymore. I had allies. I had proof. And above all, I had a plan. What they didn't know was that they had just dug their own graves, and I was about to hand them the shovel. The next day, I did something that Claire will never forget. Something as simple as a letter, but as devastating as an earthquake. When Claire read that letter, I saw the color drain from her face. Because the right words, said at the right time, are worth more than 1,000 screams. Sunday morning was quiet. Too quiet. That uncomfortable stillness after a storm, when the air still smells like electricity and destruction. Ryan and Claire didn't come out of their room until 11. I had already been awake for 2 hours. I'd had my coffee. I'd watered the few plants I had left. And I had done something I'd been planning all night. On the dining room table, among the remains of the party that no one had cleaned up, I saw the padlock. They had just left it there, next to the empty bottles and dirty plates. As if it were trash. As if it hadn't been the symbol of my humiliation just days before. I picked it up. It was light. Cheap. The kind of lock you buy at any hardware store for $5. Nothing special. But to me, it represented a line that had been crossed. I went to the kitchen drawer, where I kept my tools. I took out a pair of old pliers that Arthur used to use for home repairs. The lock gave way easily. Too easily. With a little force and the right angle, the shackle popped open without a problem. I smiled. That symbolic lock, so powerful in Claire's mind, was useless. It was pure theater. An illusion of control. Just like everything else she had built in this house, I left the broken padlock on the kitchen counter, where she would see it. But that wasn't enough. I needed to send a clearer message. A more permanent one. I went to my room. I took out a pen and paper. Not the computer. Not a text message. A handwritten letter. Because there's something about handwriting that makes words heavier, makes them dig deeper. I sat at my desk, the same one where I had graded papers for decades, and I wrote. Not with rage, with surgical precision. Claire, I've decided to say nothing about the lock, because I understand you come from a family where distrust is normal. I don't blame you for that. Everyone carries their own baggage and ways of seeing the world, but I want you to know something very important. Something you may have forgotten, or perhaps were never told clearly. This house has an owner, and that owner is me. The documents are in my name. Original, notarized deeds, impossible to change without my physical presence, my valid ID, and my thumbprint. My lawyer, Mr. Patrick Nolan, has certified copies of everything. And believe me when I say, he is very good at what he does. I know about the power of attorney you wanted me to sign 6 months ago. That paper you accidentally left on the table with the important parts highlighted in yellow. I'm not stupid, Claire. I'm a teacher. I taught over 800 children to read. I can read between the lines better than you can imagine. I also know about the $80,000 my son borrowed from me for a down payment on a house. The house that never existed. The money that became the car you drive every day. And I know what you said about me last night. I recorded every word. This isn't a threat, it's information. Information you need to have to make better decisions from now on. This is your only warning. If you ever try to put another lock on me, literally or metaphorically, you will meet the Eleanor you don't want to meet. The one who doesn't smile. The one who doesn't stay silent. The one who has documents, lawyers, and, above all, the truth on her side. Think very carefully before your next move. With the politeness I have left, Eleanor Monica Reynolds, legal owner of this property. I folded the letter into 3 perfect sections. I put it in a manila envelope, and in clear handwriting, I wrote on the front, "For Claire, personal and confidential." I went to the pantry. The door was still there, without a lock, open as it always should have been. I taped the envelope to the center, at eye level, with thick packing tape. Impossible to miss. Then I went to the kitchen. I made a chamomile tea and sat down to wait. I didn't have to wait long. At 11:30, I heard footsteps. Claire dragged herself into the kitchen, hair messy, looking hungover. She went straight for the coffee maker. Then she saw it, the broken lock on the counter. She stopped cold. She picked it up, examined it, frowned. Then she looked toward the pantry, and there was the envelope. Big. Manila. With her name on it. I saw her turn pale before she even opened it. She grabbed the envelope with trembling hands. She tore it open, ripping the paper. She pulled out the letter, and she began to read. I kept drinking my tea, seemingly calm, seemingly distracted by looking out the window at the garden. But I was watching her reflection in the glass. I saw her eyes widen with every line. I saw her mouth form a small O of shock. I saw her hands begin to tremble by the time she was halfway through. When she finished reading, she folded the letter slowly. She looked at me. I didn't look away from the garden. "Eleanor." Her voice was small, scared. I didn't answer. "Eleanor. This is a misunderstanding." I turned my head slowly. I looked her in the eyes, and I didn't smile. For the first time in 3 years, I didn't smile. Which part is a misunderstanding? The lock I saw with my own eyes? The money, for which I have your husband's bank statement as proof? Or the things you said about me last night, recorded on video with a date and timestamp? She was speechless. The letter was shaking in her hands. We were just. Save it. My voice was firm, cold. I don't want explanations. I want you to understand that this house is mine, that I decide who lives here and under what conditions. And if you ever disrespect me again, in any way, you're gone. No discussion, no second chances. But Ryan is my son, and he will always have my love. But this house is mine, and in my house, you will be respectful. Or you will find somewhere else to live. The silence that followed was thick, heavy, electric. Claire clutched the letter to her chest. For a moment, I thought she would cry, or scream, or make one of those dramatic scenes she loved so much. But she did none of those things. She just nodded, barely, almost imperceptibly, and she went to her room without another word. I heard the door close, then muffled voices, Ryan asking what was wrong, Claire crying, explaining, maybe exaggerating. I didn't care. For the first time in years, I felt like I had reclaimed something. Not my whole house, not my whole life, but a small, vital piece of my dignity. I finished my tea. I washed my cup, and I went for a walk in the neighborhood park, where no one knew me, where no one judged me, where I could breathe without feeling like my air was being rationed. When I came back 2 hours later, the manila envelope was gone from the pantry. The broken lock was still on the counter, but now there was a note next to it, in Ryan's handwriting. "Mom, we need to talk." I picked up the note. I crumpled it in my fist. And I smiled, because finally, after 3 years of silence, my son wanted to talk, and I had a lot to say. That conversation changed everything, but not in the way I expected. They thought I was scared, but I was just waiting for the perfect moment. Ryan's note sat on the counter for 2 days. 2 full days where none of the 3 of us spoke a word beyond what was strictly necessary. "Good morning. Good night. Do you need the bathroom?" Nothing more. The house became a minefield where every step had to be measured, where every closing door sounded like a gunshot, where the silence was so dense you could almost cut it with a knife. Claire avoided my gaze. When we crossed paths in the kitchen, she'd grab what she needed and leave quickly, like a frightened mouse. She no longer played her music at full volume. She no longer reorganized my things without permission. She no longer made cutting remarks disguised as jokes. For the first time in 3 years, there was fear in her eyes when she looked at me. And I'm not going to lie. A dark part of me enjoyed that fear. But I knew this was temporary. That the initial shock would turn into resentment. That the resentment would become a strategy. That Claire was not the type to give up easily. So, I didn't give up either. I started documenting everything. Everything. I bought a new composition book from the corner store. Green, spiral bound. On the first page, I wrote, Household Expense Ledger, April 2025. And I started to note every dollar that came out of my pocket. Electric, $212. Water, $84. Gas, $120. Property tax, $800. Groceries, $600. Internet, $79. Phone, $30. Total I was paying, over $1,800 a month. Ryan and Claire's contribution, $200. The numbers didn't lie. I was subsidizing their life to the tune of over $1,600 a month. And that wasn't even counting the space, the furniture, the appliances, the use of the car they sometimes took without asking. But numbers weren't enough. I needed more. I started recording conversations. Not all the time, just when something important was happening. My cell phone, always in my apron pocket, in audio recording mode, discreet. Like that Thursday afternoon, when I heard Claire talking on the phone on the patio. She thought I had gone out. She didn't know I'd come back for my sweater. No, Mom. I'm not exaggerating. She's insufferable. Now she's playing the victim, like she's the queen of. She paused. Someone said something on the other end. Well, yes, legally she's the owner. But after everything we've done for her, right? We've been caring for her for 3 years. Putting up with her old lady habits. Caring. Putting up with. Old lady. I saved the recording with the date and time. I also started making copies of everything. Receipts, bank statements, messages. I put them in a yellow folder that I hid at my friend Carol's house. Are you okay, Eleanor? She asked me as we had coffee in her kitchen, worried about the dark circles under my eyes. You seem different. I'm preparing, Carol, I said simply. For something big. I didn't tell her everything. Not yet. But I left her the folder with clear instructions. If anything happens to me, you give this to Patrick Nolan. He'll know what to do. Carol squeezed my hand, scared. Don't say things like that. Nothing's going to happen to you. I know. But it's always better to be prepared. Meanwhile, at home, I continued my performance. I started faking it. Faking mild dementia. Strategic forgetfulness. Calculated confusion. Oh, have I eaten dinner already? I'd ask at the dinner table, even though I'd eaten perfectly 2 hours before. What day is it today? I'd murmur, looking at the calendar with a frown. Where did I leave my glasses? I'd search all over the living room when they were hanging from my neck. I saw Claire and Ryan exchange looks. Looks that said, asterisk, see? It's starting. She's starting to lose it. Asterisk. Perfect. That's exactly what I wanted them to think. Because while they thought I was confused and weak, I was moving pieces on a chessboard they couldn't even see. I called Patrick 3 times that week. I want to change my will, I told him in the first call. Are you sure, Miss Reynolds? Completely. In the second call, I asked him to research if it was legal to record conversations in my own home. He confirmed that yes, anything recorded in my own private space was admissible as evidence. In the third call, I told him my plan. It's risky, Patrick warned me. But if you're determined, I support you. Just promise me you won't do anything without consulting me first. I promise, I lied. Because I already had the next step planned. On Friday night, Ryan finally knocked on my door. Mom? Can we talk? Come on. Son. He walked in slowly, hands in his pockets. He sat on the edge of my bed, in the same spot he used to sit as a boy when he had nightmares. About the letter. Claire showed me. He looked at the floor. I didn't know you felt that way. That sentence almost made me laugh. Or cry. I couldn't tell if it was honest or just willful blindness. Ryan, look at me. He looked up. He had Arthur's eyes. The same brown eyes with gold flecks that I fell in love with 40 years ago. Did you really not know? Or did you not want to know? He was silent. And in that silence, I found my answer. The $80,000, he started. I don't want to talk about that right now. But Mom, I'll pay you back. I swear. It's just that. Ryan. My voice was firm. I didn't come into this world to be paid back. I came to be respected. And in my own house, I don't feel respected. Do you understand the difference? He nodded slowly. His eyes were glassy. I'm sorry. I know. But I'm sorry isn't enough. I need to see changes. Real changes. What do you want me to do? And there it was. The question I had been waiting for. I want to live in peace in my house. I want your wife to treat me with basic respect. And I want you to start contributing fairly to the expenses. Or find your own place. He shot up. Are you kicking us out? No. I'm giving you options. $5,000 a month in rent. It's cheap for this house. Or you can save up and find your own space, like you always said you were going to do. But, Mom, we don't have that kind of money right now. You have money for a luxury car, for expensive clothes, for salons and restaurants. My voice didn't waver. You have money. You just don't want to spend it on me. He stood in the middle of the room, torn between two loyalties, and once again, he chose silence. Think about it, I said softly. You have 1 month. He left my room without another word. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had been too harsh, if I had crossed a line I couldn't come back from. But when dawn broke and I saw the sun coming through my window, lighting up the photo of Arthur on my nightstand, I knew I had done the right thing. Because love without respect isn't love. It's habit. And I had been a habit for far too long. It was time to make a decision. What happened next surprised even me, because it turned out I wasn't the only one with secrets in this house. When I opened that chest in front of them, their eyes filled with greed. They didn't know it was a trap. The 1-month deadline I gave Ryan passed like sand through my fingers. 30 days where the tension in the house was so thick you could almost chew it. Claire continued to avoid me, but I noticed something different in her gaze when she thought I wasn't looking. She was calculating, planning, waiting. So was I. It was a Sunday afternoon, one of those hot May afternoons where the air doesn't move and everything seems to stand still. I was in my room, reorganizing my summer closet. I took out old boxes, dresses I no longer wore, shoes saved from Arthur's time. And then, I accidentally left my bedroom door ajar. Just as Claire was walking down the hall, I heard her footsteps stop. Then, that held breath of someone who is seeing something they shouldn't be, but can't look away. In my hands, I held the velvet-lined chest. It was beautiful, I'll admit. About 16 inches long by 10 inches wide. The burgundy velvet was worn at the corners, but it still held that deep, almost blood-red color that gave it an air of mystery. It had gold engravings on the lid, intertwined initials that were barely visible. It had been my grandmother's, passed to my mother, and then to me. Inside, I kept the family jewels. There weren't many. We weren't rich. But each piece had history, weight, and value, both sentimental and economic. I opened the chest slowly, like someone unveiling a treasure, knowing full well that Claire was watching me from the hallway. I took out the pearl necklace. 36 natural pearls, irregular, with that creamy luster that only real pearls have. Arthur had given it to me for our 20th anniversary. He had saved for 2 years to buy it. Then, the gold earrings with small, genuine emeralds, heirlooms from my grandmother, who received them from her own mother. The brooch, Art Deco, silver, and onyx. A piece from the 1930s that my mother wore on special occasions and was worth, according to the last appraisal I had 10 years ago, about $2,000. And finally, the ring. The engagement ring Arthur gave me under the cherry blossoms in Washington Park. White gold with a small, bright diamond surrounded by tiny sapphires. I placed them on my bed, one by one, admiring them in the light from the window. And then, as if just noticing her presence, I turned toward the door. Oh, Claire, I didn't see you there. She took a step forward, her eyes fixed on the jewels. She wasn't even pretending to be subtle anymore. Is that real? I smiled, that proud grandmother's smile showing off her treasures. Yes, dear. They're family heirlooms. They've been with us for generations. I picked up the pearl necklace and let it run through my fingers. This necklace is almost 50 years old. The pearls are natural, see? Not like the cultivated ones they have now, all uniform. Claire came closer, hypnotized. Can I? She held out her hand. I gave her the necklace. She took it with exaggerated care, like someone holding something priceless, which in truth it was. It's beautiful, she murmured. Her eyes were shining in a way that reminded me of a child in front of a candy store window. It must be worth a lot. Well, I've never had it appraised to sell. But yes, I suppose so. The old appraisal said that, altogether, it was worth about $20,000. But that was 10 years ago. Who knows now? I saw her swallow hard. I saw how her fingers caressed the pearls with a reverence mixed with greed. And this will someday be Ryan's. I finished the sentence for her. Well, yours. When I'm gone, of course. It's for the family. Something changed in her expression. A light switched on in her eyes. A dangerous light that I knew very well, because I'd seen it in parents when they discovered a teacher had something they wanted. Where do you keep something so valuable? She asked, trying to sound casual. Right here, in my closet. I've always kept it here. I faked a worried look. Although, lately I've been thinking, maybe I should put it in a safe deposit box, just in case. Yes, that would be safer, she said quickly. I can help you take it to the bank, if you want. I bet she could. Oh dear, that's so kind. Yes, maybe one of these days we'll do that together. I gently took the necklace from her and put everything back in the chest. I locked it with the small key that hung from a chain. Claire followed my every move with her eyes. Well, I'll let you rest, she said finally, but her feet didn't move. She kept staring at the chest as if memorizing it. When she finally left, I waited 5 minutes. Then I left my room and walked casually through the living room. Claire was on the sofa with her phone, but she wasn't watching videos or on social media. She was on Google. I read the searches in her screen's reflection from the hallway mirror. Natural pearl necklace price. Antique jewelry value. Family heirloom inheritance, who inherits. I smiled to myself and kept walking. For the next few days, Claire changed completely. Suddenly, she was kind, helpful. She asked if I needed help with the groceries. She offered to make me tea. She even tried to cook something special for me, though it was terrible. Eleanor, she said one Wednesday afternoon, her voice sweet as poisoned honey. Have you thought more about the bank? I have time tomorrow. We could go together to open the safe deposit box. Oh, yes, but I don't know. I'm worried they'll ask for a lot of paperwork. Don't you worry. I'll help you with everything. I can even put my name on the box, too, so that if anything happens to you, we'll have access. For Ryan. There it was. The real motive. What a good idea, I said, faking innocence. Let me think about it. But I didn't think. Instead, I called Patrick. She took the bait. I told him on the phone that night, locked in my bathroom with the water running so they wouldn't hear me. Are you sure about this, Miss Reynolds? It's a risk. I know, but I need her to show her true colors. And this is perfect. Do you want me to prepare the documents? Yes, but with the clause we discussed. The next day, I told Claire I had made the appointment at the bank for Friday. Her face lit up like a Christmas tree. Perfect. I'll go with you. Don't you worry about a thing. Friday came. We went to the bank. We opened a safe deposit box. We put the chest with the jewels inside. And we signed the papers. What Claire didn't know, because she didn't read the fine print that the bank officer explained quickly and she signed without paying attention, was that this box required 2 keys to be opened. I had one. Patrick Nolan had the other, with very specific legal instructions. It could only be opened if I died of natural causes, certified by doctors, and after a complete notary review of my final will. If anything happened to me suspiciously, the box was automatically frozen and its contents would become part of a legal investigation. Claire had access to the box. Technically, her name was on the papers, but she couldn't open it without me. And if I died, she couldn't open it either, without going through a legal process that would expose any irregularity. It was the perfect trap. We left the bank. Claire was happy, thinking she had won something, that she had secured her future. She didn't know she had just signed her own sentence, because I wasn't just protecting myself from her. I was protecting myself from any accident that might conveniently happen to me. And above all, I was creating evidence of her true character, evidence I would need very soon. What happened next was so fast, not even I was prepared for it. Because Claire made a mistake that changed everything. It was a Saturday morning when it all exploded. And I made sure there were witnesses. The calm after the bank visit lasted exactly 12 days. 12 days where Claire acted like the perfect daughter-in-law. She'd ask about my health. She'd offer to take me to the doctor. She even gave me a wool shawl so you don't get cold at night. I accepted it all with smiles and thank yous. But inside, I was preparing. Because I knew this was the eye of the hurricane. That deceptive stillness before all hell breaks loose. And I was right. On Thursday night, while I was pretending to be asleep, I heard voices from Ryan and Claire's room. They were arguing, quietly, but loud enough for me to catch stray words. Can't go on like this. House should be ours. She's old. How much longer? The notary said we can. My heart sped up. I got up silently, barefoot, and put my cell phone on audio recording mode against the wall we shared. The app Patrick had recommended amplified the sound. What I heard froze my blood. My cousin works at a nursing home, Claire was saying. He says with a doctor's certificate saying she can't take care of herself anymore, we can commit her, and the house would be free. I don't know, Claire. She's my mom. So what? She's been in the way for years. Look at us, Ryan. We can't have kids because we live with your mother. We can't have our own life. This house should have been ours when your dad died. But legally, there are ways. My uncle is a lawyer. He says with a power of attorney and a diagnosis of senile dementia, we can take control of her assets. And you've seen how she is lately. She forgets things. She confuses the days. Even the doctor could certify that she's not well. I felt nauseous. Not because of what they were planning, but because of how well my performance had worked. Too well. I don't know if I can do that. Ryan's voice was weak, hesitant, but not scandalized. Not outraged. Like a son defending his mother should be. Oh, Ryan, don't be a coward. It's for our own good, for our future. Besides, she'll be taken care of in the home. It's better for everyone. The silence that followed was worse than any word, because it meant Ryan was considering it. My own son was considering locking me away to get my house. I saved the recording. I uploaded it to the cloud, to 3 different email addresses, and then I knew it was time. I couldn't wait any longer. Friday morning, I called my 2 daughters. Sarah, Emily. I need you to come to the house tomorrow, at 10 in the morning. It's urgent. Are you okay, Mom? Sarah asked, alarmed. I'm fine, but I need you here, and bring your husbands. It's important. Then, I called Patrick. It's time. Are you sure? Completely. Prepare everything we discussed. The full documentation? All of it. And I need you here tomorrow at 10, with the notary, if possible. Understood, Ms. Reynolds? Finally, I called my friend Carol. I need you here tomorrow, as a witness, and bring your phone, fully charged. What are you going to do, Eleanor? I'm going to get my life back. Saturday dawned clear. One of those days where the sky is so blue it hurts to look at. I got up early. I put on my best blouse, the blue one with white flowers that Arthur gave me for our last anniversary. I put on my pearl earrings. I did my hair carefully. If this was going to be a battle, I would enter it like a queen. At 9:30, they started to arrive. First, Sarah, with her husband, Robert. My eldest daughter, with that worried look she's had since she was a little girl. Mom, what's going on? Wait until everyone is here, honey. Then, Emily with her husband, Javier, and my 2 grandchildren. The kids ran to hug me. Grandma! We haven't seen you in so long. I know, my loves. I know. Carol arrived right on time with a box of pastries, which she left on the dining room table. And finally, Patrick Nolan, with his leather briefcase, and an older gentleman in a suit, whom he introduced as Mr. Mendez, the notary. Ryan and Claire were in the kitchen, having breakfast. When they saw so many people walk in, their faces changed. What is this? Claire asked, standing up. It's a family meeting, I said calmly. Sit down, everyone. I have something important to say. We arranged ourselves in the living room. I took the main armchair, the one that had been Arthur's. My daughters sat on either side. Patrick and the notary stood beside me. The others spread out on chairs brought from the dining room. Claire and Ryan remained standing, tense, like cornered animals. You can sit, I repeated. It wasn't a suggestion. They sat slowly on the gray sofa they had bought. I took a deep breath, and I began. I've gathered you all here because I need you to hear this. And I need witnesses to what I'm about to say. I took out my cell phone. I connected it to the Bluetooth speaker and played the recording from Thursday night. Claire's voice filled the living room. With a doctor's certificate. We can commit her. I saw the color drain from Ryan's face. I saw Claire's mouth open, but no sound came out. Sarah put her hand to her mouth. Emily started to cry. I let the recording play to the end, to the part where Ryan didn't say no, where he just stayed silent, complicit. When it finished, the silence in the room was absolute. Mom, Ryan tried to speak. I held up my hand. I'm not finished. This isn't all. I pulled out the yellow folder I had kept at Carol's house. I opened it on the coffee table. Here are all the receipts for this house for the last 3 years. Electric, water, gas, property taxes, maintenance. All paid by me, with my $2,500 a month pension. I put another document on top. Here is the bank statement that proves the $80,000 I lent for a down payment on a house was used to buy a luxury car. A car I have never used, that I have never even been offered a ride in. Another document. And here are the screenshots of the text messages between Claire and her sister, where she says, and I quote, "Just a few more months of putting up with the old woman, and this house is ours." Claire jumped to her feet. You spied on my phone? That's illegal. Patrick spoke for the first time, his voice professional and cold. Actually, ma'am, everything in this folder was obtained legally. The recordings were made on miss.com, Reynolds's private property, where she has every right to record. The documents are copies of originals, and the messages were photographed on a laptop your husband left open in a common area of the house. Claire turned to Ryan. Say something. Don't just sit there. But Ryan said nothing. He was staring at the floor, his eyes glassy. I continued, because I still wasn't finished. I want you to know, I said, looking directly at Ryan, that this house will never be yours as long as I live. I have already modified my will. If anything happens to me, the house is to be divided only between Sarah and Emily. Ryan can only inherit his share if he first repays the $80,000 he owes me. If he does not repay it before my death, his share is nullified. Mr. Mendez, the notary, held up a document. Here is the updated will, signed and certified 3 days ago. It is completely legal and binding. Ryan finally looked up. He had tears in his eyes. Mom, I never wanted. Never wanted what, Ryan? Never wanted to stay quiet while your wife planned to lock me away? Never wanted to lie to me about the money? Never wanted to make me feel invisible in my own home? My voice cracked, but I held firm. I'm going to give you one option. One. You have 30 days to get out of this house. I can lend you $5,000 for a deposit on an apartment. It's more than you deserve, but I am your mother, and I won't leave you on the street. This is ridiculous, Claire yelled. You can't just kick us out. Patrick intervened again. He can, ma'am. This is his house. You have no lease. You pay no rent. Legally, you are guests who have overstayed their welcome. If you are not gone voluntarily in 30 days, we will proceed with a legal eviction. And with this evidence, believe me, we will win. Quickly. Claire opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. But no coherent sound came out. Ryan, my son, the boy who once promised to build me a huge house, broke down and cried, Mom, forgive me, please. And there, watching my son weep, I felt something inside me break too. But there was no turning back. What they failed to understand was simple. Love isn't begged for. It's earned. And it's lost. And they had lost it a long time ago. Now, I was just taking back what was always mine. My dignity. What happened in those 30 days was something I will never forget. For better and for worse, I gave them one last chance. Leave with dignity, or leave in shame. They chose. But it was already too late for pride. The 30 days that followed that meeting were the strangest of my life. The house became a divided space, as if an invisible line separated enemy territories. They were in their room. I was in mine. And in between, a silence so heavy it hurt to breathe. Claire never spoke another word to me. Not one. When we crossed paths in the kitchen, she'd grab what she needed and leave like a bat out of hell. Her eyes shot daggers of hate at me every time she saw me. She no longer faked kindness. There were no more masks. And in a twisted way, that gave me peace. Because at least we were finally being honest. But Ryan was different. My son became a ghost, wandering the house with slumped shoulders and a lost gaze. He lost weight. He stopped taking care of his appearance. Sometimes I'd find him sitting in the garden, staring at Arthur's plants, but not really seeing anything. One afternoon, 11 days after the meeting, he knocked on my door. "Mom, can I come in?" I was embroidering a tablecloth, an activity that always calmed my nerves. I put the needle down. "Come in." He walked in slowly, as if he were afraid of breaking something. He just stood in the middle of the room, hands in his pockets. "I want you to know, we found an apartment. In the Capitol Hill neighborhood, it has 2 bedrooms. It's nice. I'm glad." He nodded. But he didn't leave. There was something else he wanted to say, and he didn't know how. "Mom, I never wanted things to get to this point." I put the embroidery in my lap. I looked him directly in the eyes. Those eyes of Arthur's that once looked at me with childish adoration. But they did, didn't they? "Yes," his voice broke. "And it's my fault, not Claire's. Mine. Because I failed you. I let it all happen. I stayed quiet when I should have defended you." I felt something in my chest loosen, just a little. "Why, Ryan? Why did you do this to me?" He sat down on the floor, right there. Just like when he was a kid and would come to confess he'd broken something or gotten a bad grade. Tears rolled down his cheeks unchecked. Because I was scared. Scared of losing her. Claire has always been intense, demanding, and I thought if I didn't do what she wanted, she'd leave me, like the others. He wiped his face on his sleeve. "I know it sounds pathetic. I know it's no excuse. But it's the truth. And me? You weren't afraid of losing me? I thought you'd always be there, that mothers always forgive, that I could do anything, and you'd still love me." The brutal honesty of that confession hit me like a stone. Because he was right, I had allowed it. I had allowed him to believe my love was unconditional to the point of self-destruction, that he could hurt me without consequence. A mother's love is big, Ryan, but it's not infinite. It has limits. And you crossed all of mine. He sobbed. A deep, racking sob. Like a child who finally understands that actions have real consequences. Will you ever be able to forgive me? That question hung in the air between us. The truth was, I didn't know the answer. Not yet. "I don't know, son, but I know this. Forgiveness doesn't erase what happened. And even if I do forgive you one day, things will never go back to the way they were, because I've changed. And you'll have to change, too, if you want to get back any part of what you lost." He just sat there, on my bedroom floor, crying like I hadn't seen him cry since he was 8 years old and fell off his bike. And I let him cry. Because those tears were necessary. They were part of his education. The next few days were filled with boxes and moving tape. Ryan and Claire packed their things with mechanical movements. I stayed in my room most of the time, letting the process happen without my presence. Sarah and Emily came to help me put the house back in order afterward. We got rid of the gray furniture. We brought my old, story-filled furniture out of storage. We put the terracotta curtains back up. We rehung the paintings from Maine. "Are you okay, Mom?" Emily asked me, as we hung the family photos Claire had taken down. "I'm sad," I admitted. "But I'm also at peace. For the first time in years, I am at peace." On the 29th day, one day before the deadline, a moving truck arrived. Ryan and 2 movers cleared everything out. Clothes, furniture, boxes, that gray sofa I hated so much. Claire supervised it all with a face of controlled fury. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't even look at me. She got into the SUV, the one bought with my money, and left without a backward glance. Ryan was the last one out. He was carrying a box of photographs. He stopped at the door. "Thanks for the $5,000. I'll pay you back, along with the other $80,000. I don't know when, but I will. Don't do it for me, Ryan. Do it for yourself. So you can learn that debts are paid, that promises are kept." He nodded, and then, in a small voice, he asked, "Can I come visit you? Someday, when things are calmer." I thought about it. I really did. Call me in 6 months. If by then you've started to keep your word, if you've shown that you're changing, we can try to rebuild something. But it will be different. With boundaries, with respect. I understand. He moved as if to hug me. I tensed up. I wasn't ready. He noticed. He stopped. And instead, he just gave me a kiss on the forehead. "I love you, Mom. And I'm sorry. I'm really sorry." And he left. I closed the door behind him. I leaned against the wood. And finally, after months of holding it in, of being strong, of being strategic, I let myself cry. I didn't cry for Ryan, or for Claire, or even for the lost money. I cried for the broken illusion of what could have been and never was. For the son I raised to be a good man, who somehow got lost along the way. For the years I would never get back. But I also cried with relief, because my house was finally mine again. The following months were for healing. I started inviting my friends over again on Thursdays. Carol, Linda, Susan. We'd have coffee and pastries at my table, without having to ask permission, without feeling like we were in the way. Sarah and Emily started coming over on Sundays with the grandkids. The house filled with the laughter of children again, with the smell of pot roast, with those long talks that only happen in families that truly love each other. I adopted a cat. A stray orange cat that showed up in my garden one afternoon. I named him Artie, because he had those same golden eyes as my husband and that same calm way of observing the world. And little by little, I started to remember who I was before I became the invisible woman in my own life. 6 months later, Ryan called. "Mom?" I paid back the $5,000. I deposited it today, and I have $3,000 saved for the other amount. I know it's a long way to go, but I'm working on it. How are you, son? There was a pause. I'm better. Claire and I are in therapy. She's still angry with you. But at least she's working on understanding why she did what she did. And so am I. I'm learning to set boundaries, to not be so afraid. I'm glad. Can I see you? For coffee? Just for half an hour? I thought about it, and this time, the answer was easier. Yes. But just you. And at a coffee shop, not here. I'm not ready for you to be in this house yet. I understand. I love you, Mom. I love you too, son. But loving doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering and choosing every day to rebuild what was broken. A year after that family meeting that changed everything, I'm sitting in my garden. The afternoon sun is warm on my face. Artie the cat is sleeping on my lap. My plants are blooming because I finally have time to care for them. Not everything is perfect. I still have hard days. Days where I miss the idea of what could have been. Days where I wonder if I was too harsh. But then I remember the lock, the humiliations, the nights I felt like a stranger in my own bed, and I know I did the right thing, because I got back something more valuable than a house. I got back my dignity, my peace, my right to live without fear, without guilt, without having to justify my existence. Ryan visits once a month. We have coffee. We talk. We've had 4 visits now, and each one is a little less awkward than the last. I don't know if we'll ever have the relationship we used to. Probably not. But we're building something new, something based on mutual respect, on clear boundaries, on a love that is no longer blind, but aware. And that's enough, because I learned something I should have learned a long time ago. True wealth isn't what you own. It's what you refuse to let them take from you. Your peace, your dignity, your right to live without apologizing for existing. And No one will ever take from me again. I share this story not for you to judge me or to applaud me. I share it because I know there are so many women out there living the same thing, feeling invisible in their own homes, putting up with it because they think it's what they're supposed to do. And I want you to know this. You don't have to put up with it. You don't have to be a martyr. You can set boundaries. You can say no. You can take your life back. It is never too late to defend yourself. It is never too late to choose yourself. I did it at 67 years old. And if I could do it, you can too. Don't let anyone make you feel small. Not your son, not your daughter-in-law, not anyone. You are enough. You have always been enough. And you deserve respect, especially in your own house, especially in your own life. Are you looking for more? Did this story strike a chord in your heart? Did it make you think? Did it give you the strength to do what you need to do? Leave me a comment. Tell me where you're listening from. Tell me if you're fighting your own battle. You are not alone. None of us are. Give this video a like if this story reminded you of your own worth. Subscribe to keep hearing stories of women who decided to stop being invisible. Because our voices matter. Our stories matter. And as long as there is someone willing to tell them, there is hope for all the rest. With love and respect, Eleanor. The end.